I went to the corner, my friends, they weren't there. They said, hey man, you want your share? I turned around and walked away. I didn't want to live nowhere. Street corners with the finest of youth.
Hey everybody, it's Douglas Scott McCarron again. I want to talk about movies, entertainment, and the impact that frustration has in it. It may sound weird, but a lot of the tension is really kind of comes, in my experience, anyway, it comes from my frustration. There's always the bad power that's trying to overcome me, and the good person who overcomes it. Seems a lot to kind of come from childhood. Me looking at it that, as a child I didn't get what I wanted, or I was frustrated, and I always wanted to have my will be the right way and things like that. But, the person who walks in the house that they're going to get killed and you get frustrated, or the boyfriend or girlfriend who won't understand or is being a jerk or whatever. And just, frustration just builds a big part into what we call entertainment. And then the resolve is when your frustration is resolved. You get the boy gets the girl gets the boy, the monster gets killed. But it just, it's also interesting to me, as a person who's sitting in this dark room with a bunch of pictures flashing away on the movie screen, how seriously I take it, and I get into my own frustration, and how easily I get hooked into Saving Private Ryan. I actually think Tom Hanks is a Captain Miller stomping around through France. Yeah, he's really Tom Hanks playing a character in a movie, but I don't think of that while I'm watching it. It's very, very interesting how the imagination can completely take over the way we look at things and kind of replace what's real with what's not. Of course, a lot of times people want to disappear into their imagination because their real life is, frustrating. Though I find as I calm down and my internal frustration is evaporating, I actually prefer the real world over the imaginary world because it's just things happening. All that frustration about how things should be just doesn't seem to impact me very much anymore. Yeah, in sports, like in baseball, everyone's watching the pitching and hitting, but the thing that really gets people going is the umpire, the parental figure with authority that makes mistakes. And if you just understood, that wasn't a strike, that was a ball, and he fits and things like that, and everyone yells and screams at the umpire, and the umpire sits there and goes, "You're out of here," As far as I can tell, that's just our parents, kind of, in the guise of an umpire. And the little kid's frustrated because, the umpire, the parent just doesn't understand. So it kind of, I guess it shouldn't surprise me that movies depend so much on frustration, seeing as so many of us have it. For me, it's I've kind of come to realize how much frustration is just a general mood that I have constantly in the background running everything. I'm striving to let go of it because, what I was frustrated about seems so real, but as I get older, I kind of come to the conclusion that, and I've mentioned in a couple of videos, that a lot of my anger I kind of self-generated. Or, some of the frustration is just at work, and if your boss is yelling at you or being an asshole, well, that can be frustrating. I mean, frustrating isn't bad. It kind of lets you know that something's not going well and maybe you need to make a change. But that's not a specific thing. For me, frustration was just like a general overall mood that was in the background. And I was constantly in my head, critiquing people. And, hey, Doug, I like your haircut. You look really nice. And I go, thank you. And in my head, you're like, well, you don't like my hair before? What you mean? Blah, blah, blah. Well, just start critiquing away. So it's really intense. I'm looking at a note here that I wrote myself to remember something. But it's just, and when I say letting go of frustration, I don't mean like suppressing what I'm frustrated about. Again, it's a good warning. But I just had this general going on in my background of my head. Even though I was always very pleasant on the outside. It was just this kind of machine that runs on its own. It's kind of like your thoughts, You tell them to stop and they just keep running and you're convinced your thoughts are your thoughts, but I don't know. They just run on your own with or without you. You kind of get a hold of them for a while, but they just kind of run and run and run and run and think about things you don't really know why you're thinking about them, in my experience. It seemed to be a much deeper level where frustration came from. Thoughts are kind of like the last part that seem to be aware of what's going on. They're the explanation of what's going on, but they aren't the actual what's going on. Human beings are very interesting that way. We get very caught up in our imagination, all of our opinions and our feelings, and quite often that's not what's going on around. It's produced for a large population better living than like being in a jungle getting chased by animals. Even in countries that aren't terribly wealthy, there's some of that, but there's a lot less of it than there used to be. I'm, of course, an overweight American. We have it so good that we're trying to have punch-out fights over whether we should wear a mask or not because of a virus. Apparently, that's a horrible thing to have happen to the United States. I don't know, when I was in Vietnam, watching people getting shredded apart by bullets and napalm and artillery shells going off, that seemed pretty dire. A mask, I don't know what the issue is, but I'm old enough where we all just got our vaccinations when we were kids. It's like, I don't know why all this upset's going on. We just got them. But, we have school boards getting screamed at by people demanding that vaccine mandates go in to protect their kids, and another part is demanding you can't put us into masks, and people are shoving each other around. That's all coming out of frustration and assuming that the big somebody is doing something to me. And I don't know, I think that may just kind of go back to our parents, and we're upset and we're not going to let ourselves get pushed around by the authority figures. Just given the level of emotion and upset that goes on, that's the only thing I can think. People generally don't get that upset unless it has something to do with something that bothers them from when they were kids. So it's interesting. You go into a movie with all that stuff going on and you watch it, and the good guys and the bad guys fight things out. It's like Star Trek, The Klingons are the friends, and then they're the enemies, and then they're the friends, and then they fight against the Romulans, who are always the bad guys, except sometimes they end up as the good guys. It's just, whatever the story needs, and somehow we get really bought into it. It just fascinates me, because it's, It's very unreal. Movies are very unreal, and yet somehow when I watch them, I get really engrossed in them. I don't know that I do as much as a lot of people because I write stories and I shoot movies, so I'm always sitting there kind of like, yeah, it's just a story. It's just a story. Why has he got that gun? What's coming through the window? I watch way too many YouTube videos too, so. But I don't know, it's just a human being. What is that part that we just get completely fascinated with this internal feeling and thoughts and opinions, and it almost drags us around by the nose. It's like it doesn't even dawn on us we could do it a different way. It's just the way it is. And yet as I get older and get rid of my frustration and it all evaporates away, I'm discovering that's not true. No, I am something completely different than my thoughts and my emotions. I don't know. Also, movies don't seem that intense to me anymore. I remember watching Aliens when it first came out, horrified. Now I watch a monster movie and I'm just kind of like, yeah, it's just sort of, I don't think it's that I'm jaded. I think it's just I'm not so caught up in my imagination as I used to be. But anyway, I don't mean to go on too long. I just find it interesting that I produce imaginary stories that really kind of depends on the good thing and the bad thing happening, and it's all caught up in our imagination, and behind it all is actually, as far as I can see, frustration. And I think actually it's better to let go of frustration. I had a confrontation, argument with one of my coaches, and I realized my frustration kind of coded the way I was interacting with her, and I apologized to her today and said I would not do it anymore. And I think it's a good chance I won't, not because of fear, but I just realized that whole coding of frustration really isn't serving me or doing me any use. So I'm letting it go. Actually, I have a bunch of phone alerts every 40 minutes or so, Find another way. Don't be frustrated. Question your frustration. It's not a frustration. It's an opportunity. It sounds cheesy when I first made it up, but it's actually kind of cool, Phone goes off. Oh, yeah, I read that. Say it out loud. Also have like 8 times a day my deepest, what would you call it? Deepest purpose. My deepest purpose is to embrace my humanity, be open to connection, and be available for transformation. And letting go of my frustration is really being available to transformation. Well, anyway, Douglas Scott McCarron. Hope this was valuable. Let me know if you like it. Give me some feedback. I'd appreciate it. Till next time, have a good night.